Hi, I'm Tim. This is the third in the series of lessons that will help you learn how to play rock guitar. In this lesson, you'll learn some techniques that hard rock and metal guitarists use to create the chunky, grinding riffs that are central to these musical styles. You'll learn an alternate tuning called drop D, some techniques for fast riff playing, and a little bit about the amps and effects that are used to create thick guitar tones. We'll finish with a few riffs that you can use to play the song in the play chapter of this lesson. Since we'll be using an alternate tuning, wait to tune your guitar until you've watched the next section of this lesson. Many hard rock and metal guitarists use an alternate tuning called drop D. It's easy to do. Just tune the sixth string down a whole step from E to D. This low D is an octave below the open D on the fourth string. So you can check your tuning by playing the open fourth string, then the open sixth string until they're both the same note, an octave apart. For this lesson, the built-in tuner is set for drop D, so before you go on, pause the lesson and check your tuning. Drop D gives the guitar a low, dark sound, especially when combined with heavy distortion. Palm mute the strings and play on the open sixth, fifth, and fourth strings to get the feel of the sound. When your guitar is tuned to drop D, many of the standard chord shapes that you've learned won't sound right. Chords that don't use the sixth string still sound the same, like an open D chord, open C chord, or fifth and fourth string power chords. But chords that use the sixth string, like open E and standard six-string power chord shapes, no longer sound right. In the next section, you'll learn some new chord shapes that work well with drop D tuning. Playing six-string power chords in drop D tuning is very easy. All you have to do is bar your finger across the sixth and fifth strings at the same fret like this. Here's a simple riff using palm-muted eighth note downstrokes. Start with 3 strums on the open sixth and fifth strings. Then play one time with your first finger barred at the third fret and hold it. Repeat that. Then play open, third fret, open, third fret. Play that riff a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like the power chords that you learned in Lesson 1, drop D sixth string power chords get their name from the root note on the sixth string. Since the sixth string has been tuned down to a D, the notes on the sixth string have the same names as the notes on the fourth string. The natural notes on the sixth string are an open D, up 2 frets to an E, up 1 fret to an F, up 2 frets to a G, up 2 to an A, which is now the same as the open fifth string, up 2 frets to a B, up 1 to a C, and then an octave D at the 12th fret. Play sixth string power chords using those roots: D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and D. And back down. D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D. Like you learned in Lesson 1, you can use sharps or flats to name the notes on the frets between the natural notes. The standard power chords that you learned in Lesson 1 used only 2 strings. With drop D tuning power chords, it's very easy to make 3-note power chords by barring the 6th, 5th, and 4th string at the same fret. This gives the power chord an additional root an octave above the root on the 6th string. Here's a riff that uses your 1st and 3rd fingers to play 3-string power chords. Using palm-muted 8th note downstrokes, play 3 open D chords, up to an F with your 1st finger at the 3rd fret and hold it, back to 3 open Ds, up to a G with your 3rd finger at the 5th fret and hold it, to 3 more open Ds, to a G sharp with your 3rd finger at the 6th fret and hold that, then finish with an open D to G, open D, F. Play that riff a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Guitarists that play with a drop D tuning often use a thicker gauge string for the 6th string. Using a thicker gauge keeps the string from being too loose, giving you better tone. So if you plan to use this tuning a lot, you may want to get a 6th string that's a little thicker. Generally, a 49 or 54 gauge string works well. There's another type of chord that you can easily play in drop D tuning. It sounds like this. This is a suspended chord, similar to the ones you played in Lesson 2. Like those sus chords, this chord is neither major nor minor. It can add an interesting open sound to your guitar parts when you're playing in drop D tuning. Start by barring your 1st finger across the 6th and 5th strings. Then add your 3rd finger 2 frets up on the 4th string. Musicians use different names to describe this kind of chord. It can be called a sus9, a sus2, or a 1-5-9 chord. You can move this chord up and down the neck. Its root is the note under your 1st finger on the 6th string, so the chord on the 5th fret is a G sus9, on the 7th fret is an A sus9, and on the 9th fret is a B sus9, and so on. Experiment with this chord to see if there are places where you'd like to use this sound in your music. As you learned in Lesson 1, downstroke strumming is the most common way to play power chords. Downstrokes usually sound more consistent and stronger than upstrokes, but there's a limit to how fast you can play them. When you use a down-up picking pattern, it's called alternate picking. Hard rock, punk, and metal guitar players often use alternate picking along with downstroke strumming to play fast sections of riffs. Here's a riff using all downstrokes. Play that with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the same riff with some alternate picking added. Try playing that one. 1, 2, 3, 4. To get a consistent sound with alternate picking, it may help to try different pick positions. Sometimes using the rounded corner of the pick on the strings will sound more consistent than the pointed end. And keeping just a minimal portion of the pick exposed between your fingers will help you keep your hand motions smaller and more efficient while you pick. Hold your pick in different ways and see what works best for you. Try playing the alternate picking riff with your pick in this new position. 1, 2, 3, 4. One of the most important aspects of playing in this style is the chunky, driving rhythm. It's a good idea to practice your strumming, always keeping your rhythm even and consistent. There are some examples in the practice chapter of this lesson that will help you develop your downstroke and alternate picking technique. You'll improve quicker if you practice at a slow tempo and try to play everything perfect, rather than trying to play fast right away. Practice with a metronome or a drum loop to keep your rhythm consistent. Take your time and be patient. Here's a drop D tuning riff that you can use to start the song in the play chapter of this lesson. You can break this riff into 3 parts. The first part goes like this. The riff starts with a 6th string C power chord at the 10th fret with your first finger. Slides up to the 12th fret for a D power chord. Then plays 2 6th-string power chords on the open 6th and 5th strings. Play that with me a few times using palm-muted downstroke strumming. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second part of the riff is exactly the same, except it adds an open D power chord at the beginning. Try that part a few times. 1, 2, 3. Put the first 2 parts together. 1, 2, 3, 4. The last part of the riff goes like this. Start with the open D power chord, up to the G sharp 6th string power chord with your 4th finger at the 6th fret, to the G with your 3rd finger at the 5th fret, to the F with your 1st finger at the 3rd fret. Play that with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Put the 3 parts together. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use this riff for the verse of the song in the play chapter. It has a repeated phrase that goes like this. The phrase starts with an F 6th string power chord at the 3rd fret with your 1st finger, to 2 open D power chords. Then use your 1st finger to slide from a C on the 3rd fret of the 5th string to a D at the 5th fret. Back to an open D power chord. Play that with me a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. The first part of the riff ends like this. an open D, to an F at the 3rd fret with your 1st finger, back to D, then play a 5th string C power chord at the 3rd fret, and slide up to a D power chord. Try that part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now put that together, playing the first phrase twice, then playing the ending phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second half of the riff is the same as the first, but the ending is a little different. It goes like this. The ending for this half of the riff starts on the open D again, then up to the G power chord with your 3rd finger, then down to the F with your 1st finger. Play that much with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Add that to the first phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now play the entire riff by putting the two halves together. 2, 3, 4. This is the riff for the chorus of the song in the play chapter. Most of this riff is played with unmuted power chords. The first part starts with a G-sharp 6th-string power chord with your 3rd finger at the 6th fret. Then up to an A power chord at the 7th fret with your 3rd finger. Then back down to the G-sharp at the 6th fret, to an open D, and up to an F at the 3rd fret. Play that much. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next phrase goes like this. An F power chord on the 3rd fret, to an open D, back to an F, then 3 open Ds with the last 2 palm muted. Play that with me a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now put both phrases together. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next part of the riff sounds like this. The beginning is the same as the last part, but instead of ending on the F, you end by holding a D 5th string power chord at the 5th fret. Play that part. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now play the whole first part of the chorus. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second half of the chorus is exactly the same as the first, except the last chord is a C power chord rather than a D. It sounds like this. Play the second half of the chorus with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try the whole chorus. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the practice chapter of this lesson, you can focus on each of these riffs until you're comfortable playing them. Use the cycle button and the speed slider to repeat them at a slower speed while you practice. Most guitarists who play hard rock and metal use heavily distorted guitar tones. They create these sounds using overdriven amplifiers. Along with natural amp distortion, many guitarists add stomp box effects to their setups. This gives them even more control over their guitar tone and lets them get huge amounts of distortion. Some players also use effects like a flanger or a chorus to give a shimmering quality to their sound. You can experiment with the guitar amps and effects built into GarageBand and try different combinations to see what you like. Another trick that some hard rock and metal guitarists use to get a more powerful, lower sound is to detune their guitar 1 or 2 steps below their normal pitch. I've tuned this guitar to drop detuning and then detuned all of the strings by an additional whole step. So the strings are now tuned C, G, C, F, A, D. It's important to use heavy gauge strings if you plan to keep your guitar in a lower tuning. Otherwise, the strings will be too loose, making it hard to get a good tone. However, using heavy gauge strings makes it more difficult to play when you're tuned to standard tuning, and in some cases it can even damage your guitar if the strings get too tight. The song in the play chapter uses the riffs you learned in this lesson with standard drop D tuning. I hope you have fun. Play downstroke eighth notes with a palm muted power chord starting on the open D chord to the 5th fret, 3rd fret, 1st fret, then back to open. 1, 2, 3, 4. Play the pattern with downstroke and alternate picking. 1, 2, 3, 4. Play the intro riff starting with a 6th string power chord on the 10th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4. Play the verse riff. You can use the cycle button and the speed slider to repeat this riff at a slow speed until you feel comfortable with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try the chorus riff. If you want to focus on just a few measures, use the cycle button and select the measures you want to practice. 1, 2, 3, 4.